Chapter 2. Geographical Description of the Southeastern Division of Sussex. Sussex is a maritime county, bordered on the west by Hampshire, on the north by Surrey, on the east and northeast by Kent, and on the south by the British Channel. The strata of which it is composed form three principal groups, each possessing characters that materially affect the geographical features of the county, and present a striking instance of the intimate relation that exists between the physical appearance of the surface of the earth and its geological structure. The popular division of this tract into the Downs, Weald, and Forest Ridge may therefore be considered as sufficiently correct and comprehensive for our present purpose, since it is descriptive of the external characters of the district, and is agreeable to the natural arrangement of the strata. The Downs are a chain of hills covered with a fine verdant turf, possessing in a striking degree that smoothness and regularity of outline for which the mountain masses of the chalk formation are so remarkable. Commencing with the bold promontory of Beachy Head, they traverse the county in a direction nearly east and west, and pass into Hampshire near Compton. Their length is between 50 and 60 miles, their greatest breadth 7 miles, and their mean altitude about 500 feet above the level of the sea. Their northern escarpment is in general steep and abrupt, but on the south they descend by a gentle declivity, and unite almost imperceptibly with the lowlands of the coast. From Beachy Head to Brighton, they present an immediate barrier to the sea, forming a bold and precipitous line of coast, but proceeding westerly, they extend inland in an oblique direction, and occupy the centre of western Sussex. From this circumstance, a considerable difference exists in the geological relations of the eastern and western divisions of the county, the latter being characterized by a range of chalk hills in the centre, with a maritime district formed of clay and gravel on the south, and a weald composed of sand and clay on the north. Throughout its whole extent, this chain exhibits decisive manifestations of the action of water. Not only are the ridges and summits of the hills rounded and even, but their surface is everywhere furrowed by coombes, or narrow undulating ravines. These uniting terminate in valleys that intersect the downs in a direction nearly north and south, and form extensive outlets for the rivers that flow from the interior of the country into the British Channel. The course of the smaller excavations or coombes is exceedingly various, but their general bearing is east and west. They gradually increase in breadth as they descend, and their opposite sides have corresponding angles and sinuosities. This appearance, however, is not observable in the principal valleys. The chalk hills of Sussex are separated into 5 distinct masses by the following rivers, namely the Arun, the Adur, the Ouse, and the Cuckmere. The Arun is situated in western Sussex. It rises in the forest of St. Leonard, near Horsham, and taking its course to the westward for a few miles, turns suddenly to the south, passes through the chalk near Arundel, and falls into the sea to the west of Littlehampton. The Adur constitutes the western boundary of the South Downs, properly so called. Like the former, it has its origin in St. Leonard's Forest, and passing by Staining and Bramber, enters the British Channel at near Shoreham. The Ouse, which is the principal river in the southeastern part of the county, rises by 2 branches. The one has its source in St. Leonard's Forest, and the other in the Forest of Worth, north of Cuckfield. The river formed by the confluence of these streams pursues a tortuous course to the southward, and passing to the east of Lewes, which it separates from the adjacent town of the Cliff, flows through the flat alluvial tract of Lewes levels, and discharges itself into the sea at Newhaven Harbour. The Cuckmere has its source near Warbleton, and being augmented by numerous tributary streams in its course by Hellingly, Arlington, Alfriston, etc., falls into the British Channel at the haven which bears its name. By these rivers the drainage of the country is effected, and it is worthy of observation that they invariably flow from an older over a newer country, or in other words, that the strata forming the district from whence they take their rise are of anterior formation to the chalk valleys by which they empty themselves into the ocean. The Weald of Sussex is an extensive vale that occupies the centre of the southeastern part of the county, and running parallel with the Downs, forms their northern boundary. It was anciently an immense forest, called by the earlier colonists Coirandred, by the Romans Silva Andredi, called by the Romans Silva Anderida, and by the Saxons Andred Swald, which even in the time of Bede was a mere retreat for deer and swine. The greater part is now in an excellent state of cultivation. It consists of various beds of clay, sand, and limestone, and is comparatively of low elevation. Its breadth is from 5 to 10 miles, and its length from 30 to 40 miles. It is estimated to contain 425,000 acres. The surface is intersected by numerous valleys, which generally occur at the outcrop or basseting edges of the strata, and form channels for the numerous streams that are tributary to the rivers in their vicinity. The whole tract rises with a gradual sweep from the foot of the Downs, and unites with the higher lands of the Forest Ridge. The Forest Ridge constitutes the northeastern extremity of the county. It is composed of the more elevated portions of the sand formation, and from the rocky and abrupt termination of its ridges, which are for the most part either crested with forests or overgrown with underwood, forms a tract of country remarkable for its romantic and picturesque scenery. The principal heights in this range are Witch Cross, Brightling Down, Danes Hill, Fairlight Down, and Crowborough Beacon. The last mentioned is the highest and most central eminence, and is 804 feet above the level of the sea. The climate in the western part of the Maritime Division is very warm, and highly favorable to the powers of vegetation. The downs fronting the southwest are bleak, being exposed to violent winds, which are impregnated with saline particles, occasioned by the spray beaten against the sea beach, and this influence affects the animals as well as vegetables indigenous to the hills. In the Weald, the due circulation of air is greatly impeded by the forests and thick hedges, and the climate is in consequence cold and damp. Such are the geographical features of the masses which compose the county of Sussex. But as our present investigation has a more immediate reference to the southeastern division, it will be necessary to point out with greater precision the course and position of the chalk hills of that district, and more especially of those in the vicinity of Lewes and Brighton. The South Downs are that portion of the Sussex range which lies between Eastbourne and Shoreham. They are 26 miles long, about 7 miles in breadth, and are divided by the intervention of rivers into 4 groups. The easternmost rises with a gentle slope near Eastbourne, proceeds inland as far as Folkeington, and is separated from the middle division by the Cuckmere. The southern escarpment composes a rocky and precipitous range of cliffs, extending eastward along the coast from the embouchure of Cuckmere River to Beachy Head, where it rises to the altitude of 564 feet. The middle group is bounded on the east by the line of separation above mentioned, on the west by Lewes levels, and on the south by cliffs which reach from Cuckmere Haven to Seaford Point, from whence to New Haven Harbor it is skirted by a low marshy coast. The northern margin is formed by the elevated ridge of Firle Hills. The western division embraces the most considerable extent of down in the county. The Adur forms the natural limits of this chain on the west, and the Ouse on the east. The southern slope is washed by the British Channel, except towards the southwest, where a flat maritime district, extending from near Brighton to Shoreham Harbour, intervenes and separates it from the seashore. The ridge by which it is bounded on the north presents a steep escarpment to the Weald, and is the highest land in the county. Ditchling Beacon, the centre of this line, being 864 feet above the level of the sea. Eastward of the beacon lies Plumpton Plain, an elevated platform commanding an extensive view of the rich scenery of the Weald on the one hand, and of the Downs and British Channel on the other. Ray mentions the prospect from this spot as equal to any he had seen in the finest parts of Europe, extending 30 miles towards the sea and 40 miles inland to Surrey. Brighton and Lewes, two of the principal towns in the county, are situated in this division of the South Downs. The former lies nearly in the centre of the southern edge, on the margin of an extensive bay, comprehended between Beachy Head and Selsey Bill, and is sheltered by a range of hills on the east, north, and northeast. The peculiarities of its site and the structure of the cliffs in its vicinity will be hereafter particularized. Lewes is delightfully situated on the eastern extremity of this range. It lies 50 degrees 52 minutes north latitude, and is distant 50 miles south from London. The Downs form an amphitheatre of hills to the east and west of the town, but the northern and southern slopes are skirted by the levels. The Cliff Hills constitute the last division of the South Downs. They are a small insulated group, separated from the central and western chains by the intervention of Lewes levels. The edge of this range runs parallel with the road from Sotherham to Glynde and Glyndeborn, passes near Ringmere in its course westward, and terminates at Old Malling near the banks of the Ouse. The southeastern angle is formed by Mount Caburn, and the western escarpment is deeply indented by the steep valley of the Coombe. The soil of the Downs is subject to considerable variation. On the summit it is usually very shallow. The substratum is chalk, and over that a layer of chalk rubble, with a slight covering of vegetable mould. Along the more elevated ridges there is sometimes merely a covering of flints, upon which the turf grows spontaneously. Advancing down the hills the soil becomes deeper, and at the bottom is constantly found to be of very sufficient depth for ploughing. Here the loam is excellent, generally 10 or 12 inches thick, and the chalk rather broken, and mixed with loam in the interstices. Some parts of the South Downs are converted into arable, but in general they are reserved for pasturage, and support a breed of sheep equal, if not superior, to any in the kingdom. Lewes levels, which have already been mentioned as intervening between the western and central divisions of the South Downs, form a marshy alluvial plain, through which the Ouse winds its way to the British Channel. This tract consists of silt, clay, and peat, and is nearly 10 miles long, its breadth varying from half a mile to 2 miles and a half. Towards the northwestern confines of this plain are two remarkable oval mounds or hillocks of chalk marl, situated at a short distance from each other, near the borough of Southover. They bear the name of Rhees, a provincial term derived from the Saxon hrig, a heap or longitudinal projection, and are about 70 feet high and from 2 to 3 furlongs in length. The sketches comprised in Tablet 2 will, it is presumed, assist in illustrating the relative position of the several chains of hills by which this district is traversed, and remove any obscurity that may occur in the preceding description. Number 1 presents an outline of the southern aspect of the country in the vicinity of Lewes, taken from a mill near the town. It shows the Firle and New Haven hills, the extensive tract of marshland that fills up the interval between them, and the Rees, which are situated in the midst of the levels. The view from the eastern brow of Mount Harry, number 2, exhibits the relative situation of Beachy Head, Firle and New Haven hills, and several other ranges of downs, that either have been already noticed, or to which we may have occasion to refer in the course of these investigations. Number 3 is a profile of Cliff Hills. It exposes a partial section of the strata, and points out the situation of several of the principal chalk pits in the vicinity of Lewes. Sussex is a maritime county. Northernmost point, Black Corner, north latitude 51 degrees 9 minutes. 48 minutes longitude, west of Greenwich. Southernmost point, Selsey Bill, north latitude 50 degrees 43 minutes to 47 minutes, west longitude. Easternmost point, Kent Wall, north latitude 50 degrees 56 minutes to 49 minutes east longitude. Westernmost point, Stansted Park, north latitude 50 degrees 53 minutes to 58 minutes west longitude. Dalloway's History of the Western Division of the County of Sussex. Four volumes, 1815, Volume 1, page 5. The Downs, footnote. Though I have now travelled the Sussex Downs upwards of 30 years, yet I still investigate that chain of majestic mountains with fresh admiration, year by year. This range, which runs from Chichester east as far as Eastbourne, is about 60 miles in length, and is called the South Downs, properly speaking, only round Lewes. Natural History of Selborne, 1802, page 276. The Weald. Opposite to the South Downs on the north are the Surrey Hills, falling abruptly southward and sloping gradually to the north, and between these two lines of hills is the Weald of Sussex and Surrey. Young's Agricultural Survey. In consequence, cold and damp. Dalloway's Western Sussex, page 6. "40 miles inland to Surrey." White's Natural History of Selborne, 1802, page 276. Mixed with loam in the interstices. Young's Agricultural Survey of Sussex, 8 volumes, page 5. A breed of sheep equal, if not superior, to any in the kingdom. The sheep fed on the South Downs amount to nearly 200,000, and as there are no natural springs on the chalk hills, the flocks are supplied with water from large circular ponds made on the summits of the downs. The bottoms of these excavations are covered with a layer of ochraceous clay to prevent the water from percolating through the chalk, and they are seldom known to fail even in the hottest summers. The late Mr. White considered this circumstance as very remarkable, and has particularly noticed it in his interesting volume on the Natural History of Selborne. To a thinking mind, few phenomena are more strange than the state of little ponds on the summits of chalk hills, many of which are never dry in the most trying droughts of summer. On chalk hills, I say, because in many rocky and gravelly soils, springs usually break out pretty high on the sides of elevated grounds and mountains. But no person acquainted with chalky districts will allow that they ever saw waters of so pervious a stratum as chalk. All lie on one dead level, as well diggers have assured me again and again. Now we have many such little round ponds in this district, and one in particular, on one sheep down, 300 feet above my house, which though never above 3 feet deep in the middle, and not more than 30 feet in diameter, and containing perhaps not more than 200 or 300 hogsheads of water, yet never is known to fail, though it affords drink for 300 or 400 sheep, and for at least 20 head of large cattle beside. White's Natural History of Selborne, page 206. What, however, appears to me more extraordinary is the fact that soon after a new pond has been made, and has received a partial supply of water from a few passing showers, it becomes inhabited by various kinds of freshwater plants and shellfish, and even frogs and lizards, although it may be remote from any other pond, and at an elevation of 400 or 500 feet above the level of the surrounding country. The Saxon Herg, a heap or longitudinal projection. History of Lewes, 8 volumes, 1795, page 416.